What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. We are a day later this week, but the Packers are also a day later this week, playing on Monday. So I am still incredibly excited to be talking with Mike Wahle on this Friday as we talk, Saturday as you are watching this. Mike, it has been a couple weeks since the Packers have played. We're getting ready for Packers-Rams. We've got a couple interesting topics to discuss, but to kick things off, how the heck are you doing?
Just happy to talk to you on this Friday afternoon, Andy. Hope you're doing well.
Doing great. The other big question is, do you have all your holiday shopping done?
No, but I'm a big Amazon guy. I'll probably I've got everything that I need to get on Amazon now, and I'll probably take the family. There's like a little district shopping area here. I probably take them this weekend and get some last minute things. But I'm a big Amazon guy, so assuming everything gets here on time with Amazon, which they're usually pretty good about it, I feel good that I'll hit all the deadlines I need to hit.
Same here. That's kind of exactly where I'm at. The little before Christmas on Amazon is a lifesaver, so that's been huge. All right, we've got a lot to talk about, though. I want to start off with an article that was published on Friday on The Athletic. Kalen Kaler wrote an article that basically discussed how it's difficult for rookie receivers to come in and play within this Packers offense, or specifically kind of under Aaron Rodgers. I want to actually go back to a couple years ago, an article that Ty Dunn wrote. It was an MVS article, but one of the pieces or quotes that was in that article, this was from MVS, said, quote, "There are two separate playbooks. There's the one we get written down, and then there's the one that Aaron has. It's not an easy thing to come in and play right away." So that was a couple years ago, MVS, in an article from Ty Dunn. And this article from Kalen Kaler, this is from Sammy Watkins, now a more veteran wide receiver, obviously. He says, quote, "There are two offenses in one at play in Green Bay. Matt LaFleur's scheme and all the tiny details Rodgers wants executed to perfection, whether it's an angle, yardage, eye, head, or tempo." So there's a few things I want to get into in this article, but I kind of want to start with those two things that have now been said in separate articles by separate wide receivers. I know sometimes, I know like in the blurb that was shared on Twitter, it was an Amari Rodgers quote. So I think people that didn't write the article are like, oh, Amari Rodgers is bitter. And obviously this is why some of this stuff is coming out. In the past, it's always been the Jermichael Finley, the Greg Jennings, or there's always been some sort of, but like this is MVS, a player at the time who was heavily involved in the offense when the article was written. And this was Sammy Watkins, who is now currently on the team with Aaron. So I want to start with those two quotes, two separate offenses, the LaFleur offense and the Rodgers offense. What did you take away from that?
I take what you take away from it, I think, is just if we're talking about those specific quotes, my mind immediately goes to Peyton Manning and some of the really, really meticulous, great quarterbacks of all time. And they're going to have all these little adjustments you can make at the line of scrimmage. That's part of the offense. And so when you say it's a separate offense, I think it's easy for and convenient for us to just discuss it that way. But the truth is, here's the way an offense operates. You have a scheme that has been designed usually by the head coach or offensive coordinator. And then you start having different calls and adjustments you can make to every situation, depending on the defense, depending on the personnel group, et cetera, right? Depending on, the down and distance. And what Aaron has done over the course of however many years in the league now is he has continued to kind of build that base, and he started doing it with Mike McCarthy. And we all know that Aaron Rodgers didn't think Mike McCarthy's offense was very good in kind of the 2010s on after they won the Super Bowl. It got kind of stagnant. So he was out there freelancing a lot. He was given the liberty to do that. He's the smartest guy in the room, so it's hard to question his judgment when he's making decisions. And so he built this thing up, and he has all these little hand gestures and all these things, all these expectations for his receivers. And then, with Matt LaFleur comes in, he's a young coach. I mean, let's not say he was lucky to get the job, but there's other candidates for the job as well. He's walking into a situation with a multi-year MVP, first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. Like this is a very, very good job for a head coach that's looking at his first deal. He just was the offensive coordinator of Tennessee Titans. He doesn't have a lot of leadership experience. Like this was a great opportunity, but there's some things that are going to come along with that. And one of them is like, Aaron makes 10 times as much money as he does. He accounts for like how many commas and zeros and paychecks for all the people that run the building. We've talked about this before. So the guy runs the show. I just think it's an explanation of like, there's so much that's interesting about this, right? Like, it's not that he has a separate offense. It's not that it's difficult to learn. The two things that are like super interesting are, one, he's they're not willing to just close the offense to receivers until they're actually on the team. Like during training camp and stuff, it sounds like they don't give it to them. So,
Right.
the number one thing is you can see how Aaron Rodgers, through getting passed over in the first pick in the draft, getting drafted, or excuse me, working for a guy that passed him over later on for years, thinking that guy's incompetent at running an offense at the level he wants to run it in, like having all these chips on his shoulders. What does that do to guys that are super motivated? They have extremely high standards for themselves. And that's what Aaron Rodgers has. Aaron Rodgers has extremely high standards for the operation of his offense. What's interesting is, and I think what's difficult with Aaron, is that he is unwavering in his ability to or be willing to help some of these guys along the way, depending on their age, depending on their experience. And it's like we were talking about before, Marcus Aurelius has a great quote. It's be tolerant with others, strict with yourself. And that is one of the hardest. I can just tell you firsthand, I had the same problem in Carolina. That is one of the hardest things that really, really competitive people have to deal with, is that the standards that you have for yourself seem normal to you, but they might not seem normal to everybody else. So when you hear these people talking about there's two offenses, Aaron Rodgers is like, no, there's not. There's my offense.
Right.
I've just adjusted it for Matt LaFleur. And they just don't see it that way, and he has a hard time. The other thing that's super interesting, Andy, I know I'm talking a lot here, but the other thing that's really, really interesting to me, bro, is you hear all these guys talking about this, and if you read that article, if you're in the offensive line room and there's adjustments and calls to be made, I don't care if you're my backup or what, dude, I'm helping you from day one. And the fact that there's been like almost institutionalized this idea that this, because there's always been receivers, like older receivers in the room as Aaron was coming up, and these new guys come and have a chance to learn. But it doesn't say anywhere in that article that like we're going to just start day one and help you with all these hand signals. We're going to quiz you after practice so you don't look like a fool on the Saturday hand signal meeting that you have with the quarterbacks. Like what was really interesting to me is, and it kind of shows you the dynamic of the National Football League, is some position groups, some players, they're not really that excited about helping out the young guys coming up until they reach these certain milestones. I thought that was really weird, given the fact that this is a difficult offense to pick up on.
That was one of the surprising things to me as well. And I almost want to dig into that more, because there's a part in the article where it says, how uncomfortable the players are. Equinemius St. Brown was quoted. There were a couple, Chris Blair was quoted, who was just kind of a practice squad guy. But there were these, it was very uncomfortable for them to be in front of the team and getting quizzed on the different hand signals that could come up. And it was in the article, it sounded like nobody gave a number, but it was around 30 different hand signals that could come up at any given moment. It also, in both articles, in Ty Dunn's article and in Kalen Kaler's, it sounded like there would be times where there would be a hand signal from like 6 years ago, and some of these guys were still in high school, that would come up from time to time. It seems to me, and maybe I'm naive, and I will be blatantly obvious, I have never been anywhere close to an NFL locker room when this stuff is going on. But it seems to me that it's in your best interest if everyone's on the same page and everyone's kind of helping each other to get to that point. And I understand that if you're Aaron Rodgers and you come into mini camp, OTAs, training camp, and there's like 20 wide receivers there, there's no way you're going to go over everything with all those guys and make sure. I get 1,000,000% get that. But as soon as that roster cut down happens and there's 5 or 6 guys in that offensive room, to me, it is the leader's responsibility and the coach's responsibility on the team to make sure, not necessarily that the wide receivers are, have a PhD in everything that they need to know, but that when we play X team on Sunday, that I know that if I do this hand signal, that everyone is going to know exactly what it means and is on the same page. And this is just me, and feel free to refute this. I always hate when people compare like an office job to like being a quarterback in the NFL. It's the stupidest thing.
It's very similar. It's actually very similar. So go ahead.
Okay. So I've been in leadership positions in different aspects of my life. I've been in coaching positions. I've been in to me, I always wanted to if I had new people around me, if I had younger people around me, less experienced people around me, I wanted to put the onus on me of like, I'm going to set the bar. I want to set the expectation, but I want the onus to be on me to make things as easy as possible for these players so that they can go out and have confidence and perform well in their given job. Now, that doesn't last forever. like once the training wheels are off and there's going to be a certain expectation and level setting as you sort of go along. But at the beginning, at the onset, when these players are just getting, or these people are just getting their feet underneath them, I want the pressure. That's on me. I'm the leader. I'm the one that's getting paid more. I want to be the one that's bringing these people up to get to that level. Now, at some point it's sink or swim, right? And if they don't swim, then it's on them. I can only show them the door. They have to open it and walk through it. But I do wonder how much is like, if Rodgers is just, and I don't know this for a fact, but if Rodgers is just level setting and saying, my standard is here, it is up to the rest of you to get to that standard. I'm just going to lead by example. To me, that's not good enough. And again, I don't know that that's 1,000,000% what happens, but that's some of the takeaway that I get from some of these articles.
It sounds like, what you're saying is like, you ever heard, Jocko Willink and the Navy SEALs and ultimate accountability. The accountability is ultimately with the leader no matter what. Jocko's got some incredible TED Talks and whatnot, and he's got some books that he's written that kind of go through this. And but ultimately you are responsible for the entire group if you're the leader of the group. But the only pushback I would say, because I agree with you,
no, please,
is that you got to understand how these rooms are, so you go to your team room, you go to your offensive coordinator room, the quarterbacks go to their room, the wide receivers go to their room, offensive. Okay. So if let's just put it on the offensive line, just because it's easier for me to talk about. If I'm in the offensive line room and there's checks and there's hand signals and there's nuanced things that I'm going to say to Chad Clifton on my left or right, and Mike Flanagan on my right, that might mean something. You can be sure that we are going to address that. You can be sure that the coach is going to address that. Sure. And so the thing that is a little bit demoralizing, I think, if you're reading this and you're in a position of authority in the Green Bay Packers, is it's like it's almost subversive in the way that you are undermining what's going on from a big picture standpoint, because the coaches don't have a list of what the hell they're supposed to be doing either. And that, to me, and even if Aaron said, or even if Donald Driver had written them all out, or Ferguson, one of these, or Jordy had written these out and given to the coach at some point and be like, put this in a vault. Week 1 of the season, you're going to have to pull this out and teach everybody, right? Like there's a time and a place, and we don't need to teach every guy. But the fact that doesn't happen, that hasn't been demanded, that's where it's a little bit, for me, again, I go back to Aaron. What's Aaron's responsibility? Aaron's responsibility is to apparently understand how he's going to work his offense in the scheme during that week, right? Communicate with his receivers, communicate with the offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. Like, he's got the fullest plate of anybody. And so with this stuff, although it's very important, although it's very easy to say, like, maybe Aaron should have a session where he's actually teaching this stuff every week, I would just say, because I know the way that these things work, you would think that a leader, somebody in a leadership position in the wide receiver room, be it a player, probably a player, but at least for one session a week, a coach, whether it's on a Tuesday or a Saturday, you need to be able to go over these things. And if you don't have the information, we've talked a lot about culture. It points to a larger problem when this kind of stuff is happening.
And that was one of the other key takeaways that I had from this article. And this was another quote. And this was from Chris Blair. Blair said that when watching film in Green Bay, coaches would sometimes think a receiver ran the wrong route, but we would be able to show them, like, no, Aaron showed us the signal. Like, to me, that is a issue. If your wide receiver coach that's going into the film room with the wide receiver on Monday, or when they're watching the film together, is like, hey, you ran the wrong route on this play. And he has to be the one that's like, no, Aaron did this, whatever it was. And so that's why I ran this route. And then it's like, if I'm a coach, I'm like, man, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't even know. Yeah. Like, I look stupid because I don't know what the quarterback is doing at the line of scrimmage, but I haven't been given access to that information. Like, that just seems very, very messy.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. That's the crux of the problem to me, is that there's a lack of communication at every single level with, it's Aaron's offense, Matt's scheme, however you want to word that. That's ultimately what it's been. We've talked about it for months on this show. And it does become, I don't think it becomes a problem in the sense that, it's very easy for a coach. Like, for example, if at any position, blocking, anything, if you have a different read, if you see something, and this is why did you do this? Oh, because this happened. Those explanations are very easy, and the coach can just move on. But as a professional who wants to know every detail of what he's trying to convey to his room. Because like this coach has, if you're the wide receivers coach, you have probably a goal of being a coordinator or a head coach at some point. And so you want to know, first of all, you want to be the most detailed, best coach you can be. And you want to know as much information as you can, because it's going to help you do your job better so you can get promoted, but also so you can help these guys get paid. And you're not able to do that in this situation. I think, again, that's what comes across for me as like the crux of the problem. How can you withhold information that's so vital to the offense? And how is nobody holding him accountable to doing that? It's like money doesn't matter at this point. As far as I don't care what your paycheck is, man, you still have to be responsible to the entire group, and you're not here.
The other question, I have a couple other questions I want to ask you, but the next one I wanted to get to is at some point, is there, it is probably slightly the wrong term, but like a paralysis by analysis. Is there too much that now we've seen when you've got two players that have a PhD and are on the same wavelength, like Rodgers and Jordy, Rodgers and Devontae, like that stuff is magical. And being able to signal and do all this stuff at the line of scrimmage, like that is a ultimate cheat code. And there's so much value in that. At the same time, if not everyone on the offense is able to get on the same page, at some point, Rodgers mentioned earlier this season that we need to simplify the offense. Is there something that, not only just from like the plays that are being called, but for how much stuff goes on at the line of scrimmage, for how many hand signals there are? It's tough because, again, you want Rodgers to have that autonomy. That is one of the great abilities that anyone has in this league, is what he can do at the line of scrimmage. But if everyone's not on the same page, or everyone's not able to be at that level, and players aren't going out and just playing confident because they have to think so much of like, all right, what am I exactly supposed to do on that play? I don't even know the right question to ask, but can that be a problem?
The question is, can you be the best version of yourself? Can you enter into flow state during the game?
Right.
Flow states where the highest version of yourself athletically. Can you do that if you're constantly worried about not understanding what hand signal he just pushed out? And the answer is no, you can't. When you think about the advantage that you have when you can communicate at that level compared to everybody else, you are certainly on a different plane, and we've seen that from Devontae. This article probably sheds light on how much more advanced Devontae was than everybody else at this little thing, right? Again, to me, it goes back to you have to be tolerant with others, and you strict with yourself. Like you're holding yourself to the standard. The hardest part here is that some of these receivers, especially young guys, have never been in this environment where they need to put in as much time as they need to put in order to get this right. They don't know what they don't know. They're unconscious incompetence, and they don't have anybody teaching them. They're just kind of like, oh, pick it up. It's like, what is that? Pick it up? I'll go home and study, but give me something to study from.
Right.
And the other part of it is, honestly, from a coaching standpoint, when I read the article, this is what I can't get over. If my room has responsibilities to know some information and they don't know it, I am going to fight and claw and scratch like hell, like you will not believe, to get that information. I'm going to do everything I can and hold myself accountable for my players to make sure that information is conveyed. And if it's not, I'm going to find a way to do it. And the fact that it is not even a part of the preparation material it's just very hard to operate year to year that way, man. It's just very, very difficult to operate at any level of this. It's very difficult.
And I think we've seen some of that this year, especially without a Devontae Adams on the roster that does have that, PhD in Aaron Rodgers system. The last thing I wanted to ask you about this is there was some talk in this article again about the difficulty in approaching Aaron Rodgers for some of the younger players. You played with an MVP quarterback in Brett Favre. I'm not saying that necessarily Brett and Aaron are exactly the same, but how difficult is something like that to strike up a conversation with an MVP quarterback that's just seemingly on another plane?
This is the part where this is a generational, and this is kind of part of the issue too, right? But he's talking about the coach. You go back to it a little bit, but generationally, this generation, everybody's special. Nobody wants to get their feelings hurt. Everybody's unique, and we're going to hold people on a pedestal. And dude, Aaron Rodgers is trying to win football games. If you got a question, go ask him.
Right.
If you got a problem with the way he looks and your feelings hurt, you're getting paid a lot of money to play a game that you love to play, that you want to play since you were 6. I mean, get your ass over there and ask him a question. Give me a break. Like that stuff for me, I have no time for. If you're not curious about it, if you're it's I'm intimidated, go find something else to do. That doesn't make any sense to me. There's plenty of other jobs where you can kind of sit in your cubicle and not ask any questions. You want to go be a player in this league, like you got to suck it up a little bit and stop thinking about everybody as being so important.
And to be fair to Aaron, there have been other articles that have basically said the opposite of how Aaron can be approachable. And I know there was a story earlier this year of Devontae Wyatt going in the lunchroom and just sitting right next to Aaron and striking up a conversation with him. And they said that, he said they had a great conversation. So, I don't think it's just Aaron. Like you said, I think there's two sides of the coin there. But yeah, I was just definitely curious, and I lean more towards your side of things there as well. I think if you have questions, you just got to go ask, and you just kind of got to suck it up and do it. All right, we've also got a game to discuss this week. We've got Packers-Rams. I know you've started breaking down the film a little bit. Rams get the comeback win with the Baker Mayfield-led Sean McVay offense. What are your take on the Los Angeles Rams and what Green Bay can do to win this game?
The Rams, well, let's start with Baker. I mean, Baker adds an element that Matthew Stafford and the rest of those guys didn't have because he can escape the pocket. He can throw on the run. He kind of gives them that option. So Baker operates really well in this. First of all, Sean McVay's a genius. I know Baker was with Kevin Stefanski, but you have multiple offensive coordinators. You've been shipped around now a couple different times. You get a little bit beat up, and you get to you land in the lap of probably the smartest guy in the room, right? Not named Kyle Shanahan. So
right.
I think that right there, he's just going to automatically be better. All the pre-snap stuff that he gets to hear in his earpiece is just going to be that much more information for him. Baker operates really well under center, whether it's handing off the ball, play action pass, keep passes, etc. So you're just going to expect to see a lot of that. The Green Bay Packers are going to have to be able to shut down their running game, which, to be fair, is not very good. Their offensive line can run block a little bit. They're not great. Cam Akers doesn't hit the hole like he used to before his injury. The rookie from Notre Dame is actually playing pretty well at the running back position, but you look at everything else they've got going for themselves, it's all got to be built off something. With Baker, it's probably going to be built off that under center play action pass game. They do a good job of sucking in linebackers and whatnot. Van Jefferson's still, he's a high level player, son of an NFL coach and ex-player Sean Jefferson. Sean Jay's the GOAT, man. So Van's got his stuff down, but they're playing with a couple backups. Cooper's off, or Cooper Kupp's out, as we all know. And if you can shut down the run game, you're going to probably see the old Baker Mayfield when he has to get back in shotgun and start making decisions and not being as confident. The other thing you're going to be able to do here, and we saw it a little bit with the Raiders, is if you want to move your defensive ends around, if you want to give them a couple different looks kind of during motion and whatnot, Baker's not in a position right now most likely to be able to make it, turn a bad play into a good play through an audible or a change at the line of scrimmage. So you're going to get some built-in wins there. So it's like capitalize on the built-in wins, stop the running game, and then be able to attack because they really have one good receiver. I know I like Atwell a little bit, but you're talking about like guys who can make a difference in a game. Probably Van Jefferson. Tyler Higbee's been a good tight end, but you just don't see the offensive firepower there. And then really defensively, man, they've been great against the run. Bobby Wagner's having another great year. It's like you look at Seattle and go, why did you get rid of that guy? Like he's nails. I know Jalen Ramsey's not having a good season, but I mean by his standards, but he's still an exceptional player. He's one of those quarterbacks who can do everything. He's a 5-tool guy. He can tackle at the line of scrimmage. I would attack Troy Hill as much as possible on the edges and make that guy tackle, especially against a kid like AJ Dillon. Like I just don't think he's up for it. I'd check his whole card as often as possible. Really, this is going to come down to, is Aaron Donald going to play on Monday night or not?
Right.
Because if Aaron Donald plays, man, the whole game plan's different. Because right now they're playing like four out of their 5 guys on the line of scrimmage are run stoppers. Right, 97 Michael Hawk out at the end. They're playing him DN. They talked about it at length in that game. Like he can't. There's not a lot he can do out there from a pass rush standpoint. He can't change direction. They ran a ton of end arounds and flip passes against him. But if Aaron Donald's in the game, they all of a sudden have their pass rush back. They all of a sudden have even more, tackles for loss behind the line of scrimmage in the running game. Like the whole thing changes. So it'll be interesting to see what version of them we get, and then if the Packers can kind of work around what is, in my opinion, the best defensive player I've ever seen.
Yeah, if Donald plays, that changes everything. Offensively, I feel like when you get a new quarterback like that, it's kind of getting like an interim head coach for a week where you kind of get a week of like energy and then like things usually kind of regress back to the mean a little bit. So I'm kind of expecting that Rams offense to regress back a little bit. I know last time Baker played in Green Bay, was that just last year that he threw 4 picks or was that the year before? I don't know. Either way.
The Cleveland game, yeah, I think it was last year.
Yeah, man, time flies. But yeah, so hopefully we see that version of Baker Mayfield and not the one that's leading 98-yard comeback touchdown drives at the end of the game. But I do think, like you said, Donald plays a huge part in this. I'm curious, would you, if you were, calling the plays in this one, you want to lean more on the run attack this Rams defense, or do you want to, try to attack those corners a little bit more?
They're better against the run. I mean, I think opposing teams are like 68% completion percentage against the Rams right now. So you can throw the ball, effectively. The problem is we're in this, what week is it? And it's like, except for the fourth quarter of the Bears game, you're still trying to scratch your head trying to figure out what kind of offense they're going to create. Yeah. And our two best options in AJ and Aaron Jones still aren't getting the ball, honestly, as much as they probably should. And I just don't. The formula for success seems pretty obvious when you look at the hours and hours of tape that they've ran. But what happens is every once in a while you'll get a glitch in the matrix and Watson will beat somebody deep, or he goes for the end around and you go, oh, that's our offense. It's like, no, where does that come off of? Whatever you do to create that defense against that look, that's your offense. Right. And then you run those plays, right? And so for me, it's like you got to lean heavily, or at least show that you're willing to run the ball and create formations and personnel groupings that force them to bring that safety up. They love to run 2 deep. I mean, they're running the same defense they did last year, where it's like bend but don't break. They'll run a lot of shell defense. They'll rotate safeties every once in a while late, but they'll run 2-man 6. I mean 9. They're going to play some sort of shell coverage. They're going to give you an opportunity to run. Their linebackers really attack the line of scrimmage. So Bobby Wagner, like as good as Bobby is, Bobby's run first linebacker. So play action passes, under center stuff, that works against these guys. The Raiders did it all night. And it's just a question of like, you have to prove that you're willing to run the ball. Otherwise, he'll just sit back. The guys are too smart.
I think we'll see at minimum 2 of the plays where Rodgers does a quick fake handoff and it's like a skinny post or a little slant right behind it. And he immediately turns around and fires it as the linebackers are sucked in. I think we'll see at minimum 2 of those. That's a play that like works almost every single time. They don't run it a ton, but they try to get it usually at least once per game. This is set to be played in cold weather, Monday Night Football, Lambeau Field. Rams obviously coming from LA. Does that play a factor at all? Or is that just, media conversation prior to the game?
It depends on the team that comes in. It's from team to team. I talked about this yesterday. Like I remember when I think we had never lost a game under 25 or 26 degrees or something, right? There was that record that we had for years. We being teams of old, not certainly us because we blew it. But Michael Vick came in and Atlanta came in the week 1. And we beat them on the 99G lead on our last drive of the game. Amon came in for a 1-yard touchdown, and we ended up beating them for the first game of the season. But it was like Michael Vick's coming out party. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, this guy's going to be amazing, right?"
Right.
And then I remember they came back that year, and we thought, "Oh, we're going to beat the brakes off these guys," because we just ran all over them in that first game. And usually in the cold weather, when you got like a weak-minded team, a team with not great leadership, and they don't really want to be there. They're all kind of huddled around that, the little jet engine burner, and they're burning their jackets and all that stuff, right? When you look across the field and those dudes are just kind of hopping around with no shirt, no sleeves on, and just kind of staring you right in the eye, it's like, oh, we got a problem now. And I remember Atlanta did that, and we always, because we had gone for years and years and years of just thinking like, and guys don't want to be here. They're huddled up in those jackets. We're over there laughing at them. I mean, literally on the sideline, like, look at them. Like, we're getting some amusement out of it. I remember we looked over at Atlanta and like Patrick Kearney, Rod Coleman, all those guys, they were just bouncing up and down, staring at us, like just talking trash from across the field. And we're like, oh, this is going to be different, right? And they beat the tar out of us that day, man. So I think it just depends on the mindset of those guys coming in.
I was at that game in the stands, and I still have PTSD of trying to watch – bless Hardy Nickerson, who had a phenomenal NFL career, but he was at the tail end of his career, to say the least. And watching Hardy Nickerson at the, 30 plus years, probably how many injuries and whatever, try to chase a prime Michael Vick, who was running I swear, like a 4.140. It was, I still have bad flashbacks and memories from it, but that was not a fun game to be at, but sometimes that happens, I guess. All right, a couple last questions before we get out of here. Mike, the question everyone wants to know, can the Packers go 4-0 the rest of the way and make a run at this thing?
They certainly can. Let's start with this week winning this game, which this is not. The problem is none of these games are gimmies with this team. This Rams game is going to be huge. The Dolphins finally kind of look like a team that might be able to there's a recipe.
Yeah.
Right? And I think they're going to bounce back and they're going to put some points on the board again just because, it's like there's just Tua in conversation. But if you watch Tua, he is accurate. Like everything they say about him is true. He's accurate. He anticipates great. He throws a ton of balls that are not thrown hard enough. He throws a ton of balls that are underthrown. He doesn't have a lot of velocity on his passes. But Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle make up for a lot of stuff because they're wide open by 15 yards when they run. It's absurd. And given if I'm looking just even next week, I don't want to look ahead, but you just think to yourself, with everything that's happened in our secondary, with communication, with Justin Jefferson did week 1, what the hell do you think Tyreek Hill is going to do against us?
And
you know what I mean? You think Jalen Waddle, do you as confident in himself as Jair Alexander is, as much grandstanding as he does? Do you think I'm not sitting here going oh yeah, he's just going to shut down Tyreek Hill? I don't feel that way at all. I don't know what's going to happen to that game. That's going to be a tough one. They're all winnable if they get over the hump on that one. Let me say it this way: if you're 2-0 after next week in the last 4, and you're looking down we got to beat the Vikings and Lions to go to the playoffs, yeah, I'll probably put a bet down in Vegas. I would bet that they would win those last 2, but I think that Dolphins game is I think it's a tough game.
If Rashawn Gary was still healthy, the Packers at this point would be a sneaky fun. I don't know what the odds are. I'm sure it's astronomical or whatever, but they'd be a sneaky fun Super Bowl bet. Not that one that's probably going to pay off, but just you do have Aaron Rodgers. You do have, a couple explosive playmakers that haven't quite played together yet. The offensive line is actually gelled together pretty darn well lately, at least certainly better than they were in the regular season. You still have a pass rusher in Rashawn Gary. Kenny Clark, we know, is capable of so much more. You just got Campbell back. You still have Jair at corner. Maybe Amos can kind of get back. You still see sort of the pieces, but man, that Rashawn Gary injury just kills so much.
It killed us, man. He was so good.
He just set everything up on defense. It's so hard to overcome that. But yeah, I'm sort of with you. If they can go 2-0 in the next 2 and just see Minnesota and Detroit. Although I did tweet out a while back, it would be so Green Bay if everything fell their way, they won all these games and then played Detroit at home in week 7 or week 18 and couldn't get through that one. But we're not going to speak that into existence. Last question. We'll get out of here. This could be a real first opportunity. And I know Matt LaFleur just said on Thursday that, they're going to temper expectations for Romeo Doubs a little bit, probably not going to play a full complement of snaps. Not that he has to if you've got Cobb, Lazard, Watson, and Doubs all playing, but this could still be our kind of our first real opportunity after the Christian Watson kind of breakout to see these 2 guys together. What's your expectations for those 2 together the remainder of the season?
Well, I mean, given the way we started this conversation, it's just that they continue to grow in this offense and learn more and be more comfortable and kind of have the playbook expanded so they can not only run the plays that are called, but also the nuanced things that happen at the line of scrimmage. I think what's been really good and what fans, I hope everybody appreciates especially with Christian Watson, is how important confidence is. Because the kid, you look at him on paper, you go, oh yeah, of course he's going to be good.
Yeah.
But confidence is so fickle and it's so important for elite level athletes, everybody. But at this level, if you don't have that confidence, I don't care how talented you are, you're nothing. And if you do have it, it literally feels like nobody can stop you. And right now, Christian Watson is probably beginning to believe. He's like Neo when he turns around in the subway station. And it's what's he doing? He's he's beginning to believe, and that's kind of where he is right now. And if you can get that going, that's why it's so important, in my opinion, if you are planning on bringing Aaron Rodgers back next year, man, you got to keep him in because you got to get these guys believing and you got to finish the season regardless of how you finish it record wise. You want those cats feeling next year, man, it is going to be all kinds of problems for everybody else's defense.
Yeah, very excited about the future of those two with Aaron Rodgers. And like you said, even if there's the opportunity for those guys to get on the same page the remainder of the season, I think that's definitely a takeaway that you can still get from this year. Heck, Mike, maybe they can even add 10 more hand signals in before the end. I'm just kidding.
I wonder. I was just, when you said that though, you think about it, so 30, right? So then you go, okay, well then what would be an acceptable number? Because then you go, okay, well you're supposed to know 7 numbers because of the like the phone number thing, 7 digits. So you can probably, everybody can probably easily remember 7. And then I wonder what that number is before you're like, man, this is excessive. Like I wonder how many Peyton Manning had. Peyton Manning had to have 30, right?
At
He had
least.
to have had 30. Yeah, that's like if Aaron Rodgers had 30, Peyton Manning had to have 50 because it was Peyton Manning.
You wonder how that whole situation was figured out as well. And then, I mean, man, there's so much interesting stuff there from what his offense was in Indy and then him going into Denver and basically taking over the offense there and winning a Super Bowl despite not being like he got benched that season. Like just what an interesting dynamic.
The best story about, you want a quick story about Peyton Manning? And okay, so Peyton Manning literally ran, like when we say he ran practice, he got the scripts. I want this look, I want this look, I want to run this, I want to do. He literally ran the entire practice. Every play was okayed by him. Every defense was okayed by him. If they didn't run the way he wanted to run it, he'd run it again. It was just here's what we're doing. You go ahead and run it. I mean, it was absurd. So this is one of our former players goes down there. I won't name his name, but you'll figure out who it is. And he goes down there and he's on like I'm not sure if he's assistant coaching or he's doing like an internship or something, but he wants to think about getting into coaching. He's an offensive line guy. And Peyton is running this against this blitz, and he's working these different hot routes. But what he's doing is not letting the offensive line learn how to pick up the blitz, right? So because he's saying like, I'll just get rid of the ball. And of course, the offensive line is like, wait a second, we need to learn how to pick up. It would be nice if we learned how to do our job, regardless if you throw the ball away, because we don't want to get you killed. Because if we get you killed, we know how this works. You get mad at us, right? So this guy, our friend in question goes, he goes, hey, do you think we could just go ahead and like learn how to pick up this play right now in the middle of our offensive practice, Peyton? And Peyton just kind of looked at him, went about his business. And I guess at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, man, you're out of here.
Oh, man. That is unbelievable. Wow.
I've heard that story. That's a secondhand story. So, obviously I wasn't there, but
it certainly doesn't sound unbelievable. Doesn't sound unbelievable at all. Are you surprised he doesn't coach or do anything on that side of things with how meticulous he was?
Well, it's just like we talked about, man. I just don't think. I think it would be very difficult for him to. First of all, he's making a ton of money doing what he's having so much. It looks like he's having so much fun.
Yes,
right?
He does.
And the hours are crazy and everything. I don't know. I mean, imagine the level. I mean, Peyton Manning had his own staff. So I was with Adam Gase when Adam Gase was head coach of Miami, and Adam would talk about when he learned from Peyton, and it was like, look, I'm not going to coach Peyton Manning, but I learned how to. He just said I learned how to work my ass off because like. I had to know at least as much as he knew, and he had a whole group of people running film for him and everything. By the time he showed up on Wednesday, he knew the whole offense, or Tuesday, they really could be game plan. And so it's hard because when you're at that level and you're doing it's like it would be like asking Michael Jordan or like Magic Johnson couldn't coach the Lakers, remember?
Yeah.
And why can't he coach them? Well, it's like you don't play as hard as I want you to play, as hard as I'm willing to play. And it's really hard, I think, for fans to understand this, but it's true. It's true in every endeavor in life. Like there are just certain, even if you ascend to what is perceived as the highest level of sport, there's a lot of guys who aren't really willing to be the best version of themselves. Like they really don't want to. They like the lifestyle. This was easy for them. They're willing to put in enough work, but they're not willing to they're not really willing to go all in. And I don't know how he would ever be able to deal with those guys, honestly.
That's a really good point. And, that TV money is not too bad either. Mike, thanks as always. Greatly appreciate you. This is one of my favorite conversations I think we've had. Where can we follow your work and where can we find you on Twitter and social media?
Yeah, check me out, Mike Wahle 68 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram, Mike Wahle 68 on TikTok, and then check out youtube.com/Process to Perform, our Process to Perform channel, man. We're doing a ton of content on there now. It's on my Block podcast is there now. And then also I've been doing Block Party stuff. with offensive line, defensive line breakdown for the last couple of weeks that I think, I mean, I'm biased, but it's some of the best stuff I've done. So I'm excited about that as well.
It's so freaking good. If you're not checking it out, please make sure to do so. Again, you can follow Mike on Twitter at MikeWall68. You can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. And of course, you can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. That does it for us today. We'll be back next week. I'll be right back here tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.